Okay. Adjusting the mic, and we're off. Now we're off. Okay. 14ers. There are few more Colorado experiences than hiking a 14er. Outside of maybe going to a concert at Red Rocks, sitting in I-70 traffic, going skiing, and pretending to get excited about Casa Bonita. But outside of that, 14ers are number one. In case you don't know, 14er is any mountain peak over 14,000 feet. There are 53 of them in the state of Colorado, and hiking them is a common pastime for us residents. And in my opinion, it's one of the best Colorado outdoor activities because it's not so challenging as climbing a mountain, Kilimanjaro, Denali, something like that, where you're going to need ice axes and crampons and guides, and you might die. There's nothing like that. Actually, for most of them, it's very easy, functionally. You just got to keep walking. But it is a big enough challenge that after you're done, you're going to feel that beautiful sense of accomplishment that comes with doing something hard. Most of these hikes are half or even a whole day hike, depending on when you start. The round trip is going to be anywhere from 7 to 10 to way more than that miles. And you're going to get above tree line, which is a unique experience if you've never been there. And today I'm making a video for the folks who maybe have never hiked a 14er before, or maybe have done one or two, and looking for some more accessible 14er hikes from Denver. You don't want to hike Longs Peak, where it takes 14 hours or whatever, and there's this keyhole you go through in this boulder field, and it seems like it never ends. You don't want to do the Maroon Bells that apparently have a weird habit of breaking off and causing people to fall. You're not trying to get that hardcore. You just want to get the Colorado 14er experience, and you don't have that much time to dedicate to it either. So here's my list of the easiest 14ers to hike in Colorado, and it's going to be 4 of them. And a quick caveat, these might not be by the numbers the actual easiest hikes for 14ers. They're all going to be within that range. But in this list, I'm going to give you the easiest 14er hikes that are also rewarding. So essentially my favorite easy 14er hikes, but they are all entry level and all easy to get done, and I will explain as we go. And I may not be an expert in Colorado 14ers. Have I hiked all of them? No, but I've hiked probably a dozen, and most of them have been in the easy category, so I may be a bit of an expert on the easy ones. And before we get to the list, some quick tips about hiking a 14er if you've never done it before. Number 1, don't go too early in the year. I'm shooting this video in June right now, and in early June, if it warms up, it may seem like a great idea to go hike a 14er. Typically isn't. It's not always, and it's going to depend on the year, but at 14,000 feet, it takes a long time for the snow to melt. So May, except for the most extreme crazy year where there was no snow, is definitely out. June, dicey. If you're going to go in June, definitely look at the reports, and if you can, wait till late June. July, August, September, those are the prime months for hiking 14ers. Okay, so don't start too early in the year, but do start too early in the day. You're going to want to get going early by around sunrise, which means you're going to want to leave Denver well before sunrise, which means a short night of sleep the night before, but it doesn't matter because you're going to be so excited when you wake up to hike this 14er that you're not going to be tired. Get up, get in the car, and get to the trailhead as close to sunrise as you can. 2 reasons for this. Number 1, crowds. It's not like you're going to miss the crowds altogether, but the later you go, the more the crowds are going to start filtering in. And number 2, lightning. If you've lived in Colorado for any period of time, you know the thunderstorms in the summer happen in the afternoon. So the idea is you want to get up there, get to that summit before those thunderclouds potentially start rolling in, and get back down. And last tip before we get to the list, go during the week if you at all can. It's like any other outdoor activity. Unfortunately, Colorado's great. The word's out. It can get crowded. Weekends are going to be a lot more crowded. If you can pop up on a Tuesday, that's the move. Okay, so getting to the mountains. The 2 that I'm not including on the list that are technically the easiest are Pikes Peak and what used to be called Mount Evans, but now has been named Mount Blue Sky. The reason these 2 are the easiest is because you can drive to the top of both of them. But we're not driving, we're hiking, and I'm not going to say don't hike them. You can hike either of these mountains if you want to, in addition to driving up. But when you do all this work, getting to the top when there's a road there and a parking lot, to me, a bit of a bummer. Unless you want to catch a ride down with someone, in which case that would be a great way to do it. But I'm not going to include the drivable mountains because we're talking about hiking today. Okay, so number 1 of 4, and this is what I believe to be the easiest hike in Colorado as far as 14ers go, and what I recommend to be most people's first 14er. That's Mount Bierstadt. Mount Bierstadt, pretty easily accessible from Denver. You drive up to Georgetown, then you take Guanella Pass all the way up, and the trailhead is kind of at the top of the pass there. It's just 60 feet over the 14,000 required to make the list, so it is the smallest mountain, if you will, on this list, and the hike round trip is 7 miles. So as far as 14ers go, that's pretty quick. If you're moving at a decent pace, you should be able to do this hike anywhere from 3.5 to 5 hours. And the important thing to keep in mind, this is at 14,000 feet. I believe this is obvious, but I just need to make a note. You're obviously not hiking 14,000 feet up. Denver itself is at 5,280. The start of these trailheads is much, much higher. Bierstadt, for example, you're hiking an elevation gain of about 2,800 feet. So significant, but a few thousand, not 10,000. What's interesting about Bierstadt is it's rated a class 2 hike. They rate hikes based on their difficulty. It's class 2, and everything else on this list is a class 1. But I believe it's one of, if not the easiest 14er to hike in Colorado, and should be most people's first 14er because it's so easy to get there. And honestly, the hike is beautiful and it's pretty straightforward and not very tough. You start in this huge meadow where you cross some rivers and hike through brush for a little while, and it's not uncommon to see moose there, which is an awesome way to start a hike. And then you start going up and you get above tree line, which is at 12,000-ish and change, and you get amazing views. Not scary, it's not dicey, anybody can do it. Men, women, kids, dogs, bring the dogs. It is challenging. When you get to these elevations, if you're like me, you're gonna get shortness of breath. You're gonna start feeling loopy, and you may have to sit down and just let it pass for a little while. But that's one of the things that makes this an experience. It's a challenge, and it's something that most people aren't used to experiencing physiologically. When you get to the top, you got great views, great payoff, which is an important part of any 14er. Well worth a day to hike Mount Bierstadt. Number 2 on the list, Quandry Peak. And this, it kind of goes hand in hand with Bierstadt. One of these two is typically people's first 14er in Colorado. 6.7 miles round trip, so actually a little bit shorter than Bierstadt. And the peak is 14,265 feet. So a bit taller. A lot of what I said about Bierstadt applies to Quandry as well. It's a good hike. You access it from outside Breckenridge, so you can stop by Breck after you're done and have a beer and a burger, which is kind of a prerequisite as far as I'm considered for finishing a 14er. Beautiful scenery, good views. You get mountain goats some of the time on Quandry. Super popular, so get there early. And a very, very simple, straightforward hike. Again, not easy necessarily, but no technical ability required, no even scrambling on Quandry. Start walking at the trailhead and you keep walking up till you get to the top. Quandry is the only 14er in the spot where it is, the 10-mile range, and so it does get extremely busy in the summertime, especially on the weekends. Try to go during the weekday and try to get there early. Number 3, now we're getting fun. Grays and Tories Peaks. Yes, this is 2 14ers. If you've been here for any amount of time, you've probably heard Grays and Tories talked about as a hike. Grays and Tories, Grays and Tories. Vast majority of people do both of them at once because they're right next to each other and it's super easy to get in between them. 2 14ers for the price of one. This one's at 14,275. Again, easy access from Denver. If you're not hitting a lot of traffic, you can get there in 90 minutes. Easy. Just over 8 miles round trip to do the whole thing. So a bit longer, but if we're talking about 2 mountain peaks, that's nothing. Beautiful views. Grays and Tories. Absolutely gorgeous, stunning. And yeah, what I love about it is that you can get 2 mountain peaks in roughly the same amount of time that it takes you to get 1 other places. It's not a difficult hike, probably a little rockier, a little maybe more challenging than these other 2, but it's awesome. You go up, you summit Grays first, you hang out at that summit for a little bit, and then you take the little saddle down to Tories Peak, and it might take a half hour between them, maybe 20 minutes. Honestly, I don't remember, but it's not that long. You get to Tories Peak. Okay, 14er number 2, you take a picture. Let's be honest, you're taking a picture. Then you go down. Another real popular hike, as all these are. So keep all the considerations that goes along with that. If you are ambitious and you're like, I don't want to start with Bierstadt, I want to go straight to Grays and Tories. Totally go for it. This is not something where you need to do one before. If you want to step it up just a little notch and hit Grays and Tories first, I commend you. Okay, and number 4 on the list, this is my favorite one in Colorado, special one to me, Mount Elbert. Mount Elbert's awesome because it has the unique quality of being the highest point in the state of Colorado, and actually the second highest point in the lower 48 in the contiguous U.S., second only to Mount Whitney that's just like 100 feet higher. Mount Elbert, 14,438 feet and just under 10 miles round trip. So it's a long one, but it's worth it. Mount Elbert's outside of Leadville, and really the move here, you can drive up from Denver in the morning, but the move here is to stay in Leadville the night before. Awesome town, worth your time, and then hit Mount Elbert super early in the morning. It is a long hike. It's considerably longer than these other ones, but it is worth it. Again, for being the highest point in Colorado, you'd think it'd be more challenging, but it's not. This is a class 1 hike. Good amount of hiking, switchbacks through the trees, forest setting, and then you get above the tree line and you get absolutely gorgeous views of Leadville, the surrounding area, the whole mountain range, neighboring Mount Massive, which is almost as tall as Mount Elbert. There is an alpine lake on the way up that you can stop and just gaze at, have your snacks, do whatever you want to do. It is the best 14er hike I've done. It's my favorite, and I think it's a nice little feather in the cap to say you've been to the highest point in Colorado without having to put forth that much more effort than some of these other ones. Definitely add Mount Elbert to the list. You will not be disappointed. That's my list. What did I miss? Let me know in the comments. And hey, do you want to know about some much simpler day hikes closer to Denver? I made a list of my favorite of those, and I will link to that video now. Otherwise, see ya. You're the best.